Copy, code in progress.
I did it harder. Was that bad?
No,
Was bad? I know CPR first aid. Come on, Barb.
Take him.
Take him. Sir, come on over with me, okay?
Go out the officer, sir.
Come with me. Who is this?
My wife.
It's your wife? Okay. What happened? Do you know what happened?
There's a pipe.
There's
a pipe over here.
Okay. Come up here by the thing. Okay.
I'll be all right.
I don't know. Okay. Let first responders and stay right here. Okay.
A seemingly happy couple were involved in what the husband described as an insane freak accident, but the police would say it was cold-blooded murder. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Barbara Kendhammer. Viewer discretion is advised. This may be a case that a lot of you are probably familiar with, at least have kind of heard of before, but I thought it would be a really interesting case to still cover and talk about, because it's one that really does kind of make you think. Barbara Kendhammer was born as Barbara Carol Adams, and this was on March 4th, 1970. She was born and raised in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and she never really left. By 1988, she would go on to graduate from West Salem High School. And then sometime after that, around that time, she would meet a man named Todd Kendhammer. They would meet, they would date, they would fall in love, and it was just meant to be. On August 3rd, 1991, Barbara and Todd got married. They would eventually go on to have 2 kids together, and their names were Jessica and Jordan. Barbara worked in the food service department at West Salem Middle School, and she actually had that job for 14 years. She loved her job. She loved the students. Outside of work, she loved to craft. She loved to garden. She was also an avid camper and also an avid snowmobiler. Barbara was also a humongous lover of animals. She cared very deeply for animals, and she would always take an animal in if it needed, help. Throughout her life, she would own dogs and cats. She owned chickens, and she even owned a few donkeys. By the time this story happens, Barbara was a grandma, and she was loving absolutely every moment of it. She was a family person at her core. Family was the most important thing in her life. That included her husband, Todd. Their marriage was considered very, very strong. They were always looked at and observed as a very loving, nurturing, happy married couple. Sure, like every marriage, they're going to have issues from time to time. There's going to be arguments, but none of it was ever any different than any other normal marriage. People in their life would aspire to have a marriage like Todd and Barbara's. There were no affairs. They never laid a hand on each other. There was no money issues. They were pretty well off for the most part. In 2016, they celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary, and by all accounts, they intended to go another 25. But unfortunately, that would not get to happen. Their solid, loving, embracing relationship would make what happens next so completely baffling. It was the morning of September 16th, 2016. Sometime around approximately 8 o'clock in the morning, Todd Kendhammer would make a panicked 911 call. This is going to be some of that call. It's not the clearest. It's staticky, but I just wanted you to hear a portion of it.
Hello? Oh, hi, this is the 911 center. You called me. I've got need help now? Yes, hang on. I've got police and ambulance, first responders headed to Emmenberg and Cooley. I need you to tell me what happened. Slow down. Did the car need help? Okay. And so your wife is injured?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it was in a car accident?
Yes, a pipe or something came through her windshield. A pipe did.
Pipe? Okay. What's your first name?
Todd.
Todd, okay. And they're going to help you help her until somebody gets there, okay?
Hurry up.
I've got Todd on the line reference that accident at Bergen County in County M. He said a pipe or something came through the windshield.
Tell me exactly what happened. She got her and she's hitting the head and in the throat, I think, in the throat or something. She's got blood coming out of her nose and mouth and it's really big and blue.
How old is she?
46.
Is she awake?
No, I can't get her to right. She talked that first a little bit.
Okay. Is she breathing?
No, I don't think so. No.
All right, sir. We do have help on the way. Stand alone.
How long?
You're
Up the road.
Sir, I want you to stay right where you're at, sir.
Okay. I'm going to try to do something with it.
Yep.
I'm going to put the phone down.
Can you get her out of the vehicle, sir?
I got her out.
Okay, I want you to lay her flat on the ground.
I got her flat. I know Penn State, but I don't know what to do with this.
Okay.
He's got blood coming out of his mouth.
That's okay. Go ahead and pump it twice per second and 2 inches deep, okay?
Okay.
Let the chest come up all the way between the pumps.
I'll come back in a minute.
Okay, keep going, sir.
She got blood bubbling out of her mouth, Dad.
That's okay. That's okay. We're going to keep pumping the chest hard and fast, okay?
Pass out.
I'm doing great, sir. You're doing just fine. Keep pumping the chest hard and fast, 2 inches deep. Keep going, sir. You're doing great.
How far are they?
Essentially, Todd told the 911 operator that he and his wife had just gotten into a car accident. They were driving down this very rural stretch of road just outside of La Crosse, Wisconsin, when what Todd described as a long flatbed truck was carrying these, super long steel pipes. This is something that would probably be in a Final Destination type movie. As a matter of fact, I'm sure something almost similar with logs happened in the movies. But he says that one of these pipes flew off the truck and then somehow bounced on the road and then flew through the windshield and struck his wife, Barbara, what looked like in the neck and in the head. He basically told police that when the steel pipe was flying towards the windshield, he instinctively punched towards the windshield, the glass, in order to, I guess, stop it. He then says after it went through the windshield and hit his wife, he swerved completely out of control a couple of times, and then he landed backwards in a ditch. On the 911 call, Todd can be heard saying that she's not breathing. The 911 operator tries to walk him through CPR. He claims that he's doing it, and also he says he already had tried doing it before he called 911, but it appeared to him that she wasn't breathing. First responders arrive within minutes of this phone call taking place. They do determine that Barbara is actually still breathing. She has a very faint pulse, but she is still alive. They rush her to the nearest hospital, but unfortunately, by the following morning, Barbara would pass away. She never actually regained consciousness. Rewinding back now to the initial incident, when police arrived at the scene, Barbara was lying on the grass next to the car. Todd says that he had removed the pipe from the windshield because he needed to do that in order to get Barbara out of the car, and that's what he did. And then the pipe was just sort of laying on the ground. There were two very obvious, distinct cracks in the windshield, very large cracks. One of them did not appear to have any kind of punctured through hole, but the other one did have a hole which did fit the exact size of the pipe. So they can confirm that the pipe would likely have gone through the windshield. They just don't know how. There were traces of blood on the pipe. There was blood on the passenger side floor mat and on the center console, the front edge of the passenger seat, and in the shoulder area of the passenger seat belt. Where there was not blood was on the backrest of the seat or the headrest. The pipe hit her head and she was bleeding from there, according to Todd. They thought it strange that there was no blood on the headrest. Todd himself did have a few curious injuries. He had some injuries to his hands across his knuckles, which he says is because he had instinctively, he said he reacted and punched the glass, I guess in order to stop the pipe from going through the windshield. Not entirely sure what he was thinking, but he says it was just a quick gut reaction. My question there is, if he had time to see the pipe and react to it by punching the windshield, would he not have had time instead to just swerve the car out of the way? He also had scratches to his neck and he had scratches to his chest. He says that those scratches came from his job. He worked, he had a couple, I think he had 2 jobs, but he did some part-time work, oddly enough, repairing windshields. And he says working with glass, he gets cut a lot. That being said, when the coroner was examining Barbara's body, they did take samples from underneath her fingernails. And then later on, they would determine that there was DNA in her fingernails that was not hers. It would soon be confirmed to be that belonging to her husband, Todd Kendhammer. He had scratches on his body. She had his DNA under her fingernails. That being said, this is a married couple. They've been married for 25 years. What they do in the bedroom is up to them. So they could not say for sure. No one could say for sure how his DNA got underneath her fingernails. They couldn't say it came from an altercation between the two of them, or if it happened during something else. But police do believe that this was proof that Todd and Barbara had gotten into some kind of physical altercation, some kind of fight, where she was trying to fight back. That's what they believed. His first interrogation happened, literally, I think, hours after the incident took place. He told police initially, because they asked him what was the destination of this trip. He said that he was driving to pick up a truck from a friend in order to fix the windshield of that truck. And then on the way, he was going to drop Barbara off at work. Police would question that friend. The friend said, "No, that's a lie. We made no arrangements. There was no plans for him to come over and get my truck." I guess they interviewed him a couple weeks later again. He changes his story now to say he was actually on his way to pick up a windshield from another friend for replacing another windshield somewhere. That friend was questioned. That friend also said, "No, that's not true. We had no arrangements. There was no plans to meet." So he has now lied twice about the destination of that trip. Next in their investigation, police would test the theory of could a metal pipe fall off a flatbed truck, as Todd explained, bounce. They allegedly tested this many times, and for the most part, their tests failed, meaning they could not replicate the incident. But there was one occasion where they were able to replicate it. They tested it, it bounced, and they even recorded this. We'll get back to that later. But it proves that while rare and uncommon, it is possible. So now police are interested about this truck. They scour CCTV, anything they could find from homes along the road, farming areas along the road. They do find a camera that is focused on that road. It's not up close, and they believe they see the Kendhammer vehicle driving down the road during the time Todd says they were driving. But police, what they do not see is they never see a flatbed truck anywhere in front, behind, next to, at all on that road. At any time before, during, or after Todd says this incident happened. Keep in mind, police also cannot confirm that the car they saw on that camera was, in fact, the Kendhammer car. It was far away. It was grainy. They looked for this truck. And actually, this was like within minutes after responding to this incident, they had police going and driving down the roads looking for this truck because it couldn't have gotten that far. They never found it. This is a rural area where there's not exactly many places for this truck to have turned and, just gone forever. Like, it should have been somewhat easy to find it. They never found it. They put out bulletins and, bolos and media stuff about, if anyone knows this truck, he didn't get a license plate, Todd. It all happened fast, according to him. They got nothing from any of it. No one ever came forward to say, that's my company's truck. No one ever came forward to say, ooh, I was driving a truck. And they got nothing. No witnesses, nothing. Keep in mind, let's just say, in theory, that this entire scenario is true. If they put out on the news that a woman is dead because a metal pipe fell off a truck, the odds of the person coming forward to say, ooh, that was my truck, and to incriminate themselves, people nowadays, the odds of them coming forward probably slim to nil. But it does also say a lot that truck just could not be found anywhere. And then another witness came forward to police. They said on that morning, they were driving down that exact same road and they saw the Kendhammer vehicle in the ditch area where it eventually was found. But this witness says there were no dents. There were no breaks in the windshield whatsoever. It was fully intact with no damage. So investigators at this point believe they have enough. And in December of 2016, they arrest Todd Kendhammer and they charge him with the murder of his wife. Their 2 adult children immediately stood by him and said, there's just no way our dad killed our mom. They were in such a great couple, such a loving couple. They never got in fights, like big fights. There was nothing to indicate that that our dad would ever do this. What would police say was Todd's motive? Well, that's the kicker. They couldn't find one. They found nothing. They dug deep into this couple, right? They interviewed friends, family, coworkers, just everyone. Not one person said that their relationship ever appeared to be strained. No one said they ever observed any significant fights. There were no affairs. They checked through computers and cell phones. No side relationships. There was no financial issues. They already had plenty of money. And so a life insurance policy didn't really factor into anything. Like, everyone they interviewed said this couple was the real deal. That there's no way Todd could ever be violent towards Barbara and vice versa. So prosecutors had to rely on physical evidence. The windshield, like I said, had 2 very distinct cracks and breaks in it. The one in the center of the windshield, that's the one that Todd says he had punched instinctively, and that's why that crack is there. The other one directly in front of the passenger seat, obviously, is the one where he says the pipe went through. The defense produced witnesses who are experts with automobiles, experts with glass, windshields, that kind of thing. And they said that the center crack is very, very possible to have happened by Todd punching the windshield. And that the second crack was obviously the pipe. The prosecution would produce witnesses that would basically state that the center crack appeared to be like a failed attempt to hit the pipe through the windshield. Like, they're suggesting that Todd had initially tried to go at an angle so it looked like it came from his side, like at an angle towards Barbara, but that he couldn't break the windshield. So then he went and tried again, and he was finally successful on the passenger side, so then it would look more like a direct, straight hit through the windshield. The problem with this for both the defense and the prosecution's witnesses, there was really no way to prove or disprove any of that. The medical examiner who actually did the autopsy said that the injuries on Barbara were inconsistent with being struck by a metal pipe, the exact metal pipe in that matter, and that like the physics behind it, how she would have been struck, I guess, multiple times because she had injuries in multiple locations on her face and her neck by a pipe going through the windshield and striking her what would have been one time, how she would have gotten those multiple injuries. So basically, the coroner said that the injuries on Barbara, because she also had scratches on her, she had like bruises all over her body apparently. So they're saying that her cause of death was blunt force trauma, but not consistent with the metal pipe in this situation. The defense would not produce any of their own experts on this matter, but instead they would just kind of grill the actual medical examiner. They asked about something else in the car. So in the vehicle that morning, they found this big like metal water jug that was Barbara's, and it was sitting on the floor of the passenger seat where it would have been by her feet. They asked the medical examiner that the injuries to her face, could they have been consistent if she had been maybe holding the metal jug up at the time and somehow either the pipe flew through the windshield and pushed it towards her face, or if she kind of instinctively used it as a shield kind of thing, that if that hitting her face would be consistent with the injuries. The medical examiner did not say that it's not inconsistent. They said it's possible, yeah. Couldn't confirm or deny it, but they said it is possible. The only issue with that is there was no blood on this metal container, and there really wasn't any damage to it to suggest that a person slammed so hard into it that it caused them to die. Todd would testify in his defense, and he was asked, hey, why did you tell two different stories where both of them were confirmed lies? He said that, the first time he was interviewed was literally within, like, his wife was on the brink of death. His brain was scattered. He was everywhere emotionally. He said he doesn't even remember talking to them. The second time, he kind of says he was still in that whirlwind thing. But this is like weeks later where he had more time to compose himself. But if you're also going into an interrogation and you're thinking you're being accused of something, your brain may be a little foggy. The defense would produce, I guess, experts, a couple of them, to state that, there is a certain level of trauma that would be consistent with what he says he went through to make his brain kind of react that way and just sort of tell whatever he could think of the time. But at the same time, like, why lie about your destination? It seemed kind of like silly. And if you're lying about your destination, what else are you lying about? But like I said, psychologically, it's possible that he could have just been completely like, blah, 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 The prosecution would need to come up with something because they're saying that the accident itself was a staged scene, that he staged it after she was already dead, that he must have loaded her into the vehicle and then brought them to this destination because it was rural, it was out of the area. Not many witnesses or any witnesses would see this. And then he had time to set it up. So they basically said that they must have gotten into an altercation at their house where he was violent with her and beat her and killed her. But they never found any actual physical evidence at the house, nothing extreme that would point to a murder being taken place there. And so when it came to the conclusion of the trial, the jury would agree with the prosecution. And Todd Kendhammer was found guilty and convicted, and he was sentenced to 30 years to life for the murder of his wife, Barbara. Shortly after his conviction, Todd would hire some new attorneys, one of them being a man named Jerry Buting. And some of you may know him very well. I know I do, because he was Stephen Avery's attorney, because this takes place in Wisconsin. So he was Stephen Avery's attorney during the murder trial. That's a whole other thing, of course. But he, along with an associate of his, would take over this case kind of in the appeals process. And he actually was pretty successful pretty quickly of getting an evidentiary hearing because, if you remember, I said earlier that the police had filmed their pipe drop test to see if it was possible that the pipe would bounce and fly through the windshield. And like I said, they were able to successfully repeat what he claimed happened one time, meaning that it was possible. But the defense never saw this video. The prosecution, I don't know if they deliberately withheld it or what the situation was, but that video was never shown in court. Because obviously, if you show a video where it was possible, that would throw a huge wrench in your plan to prosecute and convict this guy. Because you're saying it's impossible. So they were able to play this video for the judge at the evidentiary hearing. They also produced a couple more medical examiner experts who went over the autopsy reports in grave detail. And these experts determined that the conclusion that the original medical examiner had, that the injuries on Barbara's body could not have been consistent with what Todd said happened, well, that was basically not true. They were able to determine that the injuries from a pipe could have been reasonably possible because originally they're like, well, there's multiple locations around, so how has she been hit with a pipe more than once? And that's simply explained by force, gravity, that kind of thing, physics. So if the pipe had gone through the windshield, it may have initially hit her, and then she may have fallen at high speeds back into the pipe at a different angle. The pipe could have jostled around and struck her again. There are things that could have happened where she could have gotten those injuries in the way Todd said. These same experts said that these injuries were actually more not consistent with a physical assault, that they were actually more consistent with what Todd said happened. But as recently as May of 2022, Todd Kendhammer was denied a new trial. I do know that he continues to plan to appeal this, but that is where it stands now. He is still in prison for the murder of his wife. It is the prosecution's job, as always in this country, and I'm sure other countries, to prove a person's guilt, as we all know, beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't think the prosecution did themselves any favors by withholding that evidence, that video, proving that it was possible, rare, but possible, to have happened the way Todd said it happened. To me, that's very telling that they didn't want people to see that video. Personally, I think Todd's story sounds absolutely cuckoo, bonkers, and super implausible, but it's possible. It doesn't matter what I or a juror thinks sounds crazy and absurd. What matters is the actual evidence and the proof. And while it is an extremely rare thing, we also need to acknowledge that freak accidents, and I've covered freak accidents over on TikTok a lot, they happen. And sometimes they are absolutely bizarre. They're 1 in a million, but they happen. If I was on this jury, I don't think I could, if I'm wanting to uphold the standards of the law, I don't think I could have said confidently, guilty. Because there was no established motive whatsoever. Nothing financial, no affairs, like I've said, nothing. There was never any extreme fighting between the two of them. And then withholding that video, having kind of like these inconsistent theories about, and not being able to really say for sure how she died. They're basically just sort of guesstimating. It's all very telling. But then I also think to myself, Todd Kendhammer is a person who literally works on windshields basically for a living. What are the chances? of a situation arising where a windshield is a prime piece of evidence in a possible murder? Is it because he knows them so well that he figured he could have broken the windshield, but then it didn't work, and so he had to like do a second hit to the windshield? I don't know. That part's a little weird to me. It's a little weird about the lies about where they were going. But again, this could be a mental slip-up. You don't see that much. Usually people are just flat out lying. So I don't super trust that portion, but who am I to judge, I guess? But also, did they really prove beyond a reasonable doubt? I know it sounds crazy, but this is a crazy one. This is a bizarre story. And I would, at the end of the day, I don't know. I would hate for a man to be imprisoned for something he did not do. We see it so much, especially in Wisconsin, right? I don't know, you guys. I don't know how I feel about this one. This is one I've heard of this case before. I've even watched, I know, a true crime documentary on it before. I'm sure many of you have. I just thought this would be a really interesting one to kind of like discuss, but I am very much on the fence. I hope he's not an innocent man in prison, because that sucks. Because now, their kids have now basically lost both their parents. The whole thing sounds so absurd, so unbelievable, that it has to be true, right? But it's also so absurd that it rarely happens. Did this happen that way? I don't know. But that's it for this case. True Crime Maroonies. I hope you found it interesting if you had never heard of this one before. But if you have tripped, fallen, stumbled, and thrown a pipe through a windshield and came into this video by happenstance, hi, I'm Mike. I tell 4 true crime stories a week here on YouTube. I also tell one on Instagram, one on Facebook, and a few throughout the week on TikTok. So please subscribe to me here and give the video a likesy poopsies. Ugh. And also, all my socials are in my link tree below, in the description below. So please feel free to follow me on all the other platforms as well if you like. Next, if you have a case you would like me to cover, please send me an email. The information is below again. Go to my case list first in my link tree, and you will see about 4,500 names on my list. Scroll through it, search through it, whatever you got to do. If you do not see the name that you want me to cover, then email me just the name, where it happened, when it happened, and I will eventually add it to my list. I'm not really responding back to emails anymore because it's become super time consuming. I apologize, but I do add the names to my list. If you already see the name on there, please do not email it to me. It's already there. I pick my cases as random as I can, so I will get to it eventually. I just don't know when. By the way, I forgot to mention, if you're on my list and you see a scratch mark through it, that means I've covered it. So you'll find it either here or on TikTok, pretty much. But all my TikTok videos are essentially over here in compilation form now as well. Next, if you'd like to support me in any way, we do sell merch. We sell t-shirts and hoodies and wine glass and stuff. We do ship internationally. My good old buddy Adam, he does it all himself. He makes it himself. He ships it himself. He is a wonderful human. So that's the best way to support me. If you have a Discord account and you want to join my Discord server, please feel free to do so. The link is in my link tree as well. Please be over the age of 18 or you will be kicked out of it. If you do enter it, you will need to go to the rules and guidelines section, and then you need to click on the yellow thumbs up next to the Carl bot, the little turtle dude, and then you have to wait like 10 minutes and then you'll be able to see the rest of it. So blah, 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 blah. There you go. And that is it, true crime of Rooney Dooney 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 Ding Dongs for this video. Like I close every single video, I would like to talk about something very important to me. QAnon, hear me out.